Welcome, friends.
To the How-To Heretic.
Hi, I'm Uncle Mark.
And I am Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear, that's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of. So you'd better make the most of it.
And run. Well, uncles.
Well, hello, uncles. Yes, hello, uncles.
We should do a musical, the three uncles, kind of like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, but with a lot less, non-consensual kidnapping and sex.
Yeah. I like it. Can we have a little bit of non-consensual kidnapping and sex?
It's a musical.
Okay.
Sold. That will be coming out next week, friends. So look for that. That's going to be really fun. What a show! We have a spooky,
on our TikTok channel.
We have a spooky show and a silly show, and everything in between. Everything between spooky and silly. All the emotions, all the feels. So
that's right.
I'm gonna lead off our spooktacular with talking about a bunch of the scary angels in the Bible.
And I'm going to then talk about a bunch of the scariest things in downtown Salt Lake City.
Yeah. And then I'm going to close off with just sort of a miscellany, a grab bag, if you will, of Bible spooktacury.
Yeah. There's really no end to it.
What you're going to find out in this show, dear listeners, is that your uncles really need to talk to each other before they start recording.
We could do with a little more coordination, sure, but it's fine. It's fine. It's all going to be great.
And by we, I think that you're talking about Doug and Dan. I'm fine.
Well,
I've got this. So, speaking of people that have got stuff, thank you so much to our friend Vern, who continues to populate the YouTube channel for us, and of course Joe, who is running the unofficial How-To Heretic Hangout Hookup, whatever that's called. I think it's a dating app. I don't know.
It's a Facebook group, is what it is.
I hope there's a lot of heretic on heretic action over there. That's all I'm saying. So get with it. And with that, let's run on into episode 160 with Reckless Abandon.
Ooh.
Uncle Mark?
Yes.
I don't know if you know this, but I was playing with my nieces and nephews, and they're just such little angels.
They are such little angels, aren't they?
I don't know if you've ever dealt with the little ones, but they're just such angels, and I just love them so much.
They're so sweet. It's perfect. Yes, absolutely. I've known some angels in my time, and not all of them were Charlies.
Hey,
Doug, what do you know about angels?
The little kids are such little angels until they reach the ages of between 2 and 47, and at which point they're just assholes.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you guys to fucking get to 47.
Well, I do know a little bit about angels I'd like to talk about today. So by the time most of our listeners hear this, we will be in full Halloween season. Ooh. Although at my local department store or grocery store has already skipped Halloween and Thanksgiving and put out Christmas decorations.
Yes.
For real. A sin for which I feel no inclination towards forgiveness.
Yeah.
Halloween is a particularly relevant holiday for this show, as it is kind of a nexus of various and sundry religious beliefs and traditions, as well as all kinds of woo and fears about ghosts and demons and witches and dark magic. Unfortunately, a season of fear and darkness is what we call our reality these days, and because unless you're a brain-dead Trump supporter, there will be no trick-or-treating this year for obvious reasons. So I thought we could have our own mini spooktacular and talk about some of the most terrifying monsters the human mind has ever conjured. I am talking, of course, about angels.
What?
As we'll discuss, the term angel can mean many things, but most broadly it refers to a being of some kind that is higher in the hierarchy, the heavenly hierarchy, than humans, but lesser than God or gods. And since there is quite a chasm between those two poles, there are many, many things in between. So many, if not most, religious traditions have some sort of angels, and of course these beings are as syncretic as the deities they serve. But for the purposes of our discussion today, we'll stick mainly with the angels discussed in the Bible, primarily in the Old Testament. We'll talk about the New Testament angels and the Book of Mormon angels only for contrast. Most of us, at least in the Western world, when asked to think of an angel, think of beautiful humanoid creatures surrounded by light, often with white robes, white wings, halos. These are the angels, after all, that we have been raised on and that litter Christian art. Or maybe we think of the hapless but lovable beings trying to understand humans and their free will while serving to protect and defend them. Think Nicolas Cage in City of Angels, or Henry Travers in It's a Wonderful Life. Or maybe we think of the badass warrior angels in such films as Constantine and Legion. These angels are roided-out, gun-toting action heroes, but remain indelibly humanoid. Or perhaps, and most unlikely, we think of the scrappy rapscallion angels in films like Michael and Dogma. Hopefully not. The only thing all these depictions have in common is that they are all wrong, or at least very incomplete. Biblical angels, particularly the further you go back into the Old Testament, hardly resembled humans at all, and are so strange and nightmarish that you would have expected to find them in a Hieronymus Bosch painting or an H.P. Lovecraft story.
Or both.
Or both.
Or both.
And undoubtedly those two drew some inspiration from biblical angels. The term itself comes from the Greek word angelos, but that is based on the Hebrew word malach, which roughly translates as messenger. Indeed, conveying information is one of the primary purposes of angels in the Bible, but not their only one. One of their other major roles in the Bible is destruction.
Oh, I thought you were going to say trumpet playing.
That comes near the end.
Okay.
In 2 Samuel, David is punished for his sins by having an angel release a pestilence on his army that killed 70,000 soldiers. The angel was so bloodthirsty that it nearly destroyed Jerusalem before God stayed its hand. Of course, we all know about the angel that God sent into Egypt to kill all the Egyptian firstborn. That didn't happen, as Uncle Dan covered back in episodes 106 through 109. If you remember, that angel not only killed the firstborn humans, but the firstborn of all animals as well.
It's good to be thorough. I prefer a thorough angel.
Right.
Yeah, you never know what if you don't know what the instruction means exactly, you just do all of the things.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's a story in 2 Kings 18 where an angel killed 185,000 Assyrian soldiers laying siege to Jerusalem in one bloody night. And that's the story. Okay, the massacre of 185,000 soldiers in about a 6-hour period. I didn't even know about that till I was reading up on this stuff somehow.
Wow.
So
and it says 185,000?
185,000 soldiers.
Wow, that's a stink. Can you imagine?
Right.
Imagine being in charge of cleaning that up.
Exactly. So these stories alone should shave a little sheen from the image of angels, but wait until we talk about what they actually look like. Now, the angels we've just talked about, if they are described at all, are pretty much just human-like. No wings, no halos. Much later in the Bible, some even get names. Daniel is the first person to give an angel a name, and that angel is Gabriel. But we also get Michael and Raphael as well. The angels that came to Earth.
I think those are Ninja Turtles, actually.
Yeah, all the Ninja Turtles.
Was there a Gabriel?
No.
No, they were Renaissance artists.
I know.
Michelangelo, Donatello. I don't have to tell you about 80s culture. You were there. Yeah.
The angels that came to Earth and had sex with humans, as very briefly described in Genesis 6, were probably also malach. However, these humanoid angels are far from the only heavenly beings in the Bible, and depending on who you ask, they actually rank near the bottom. Now, because the Bible is as much of a cacophonous mess as the first presidential debate, there is not a clearly described hierarchy of heavenly beings, so quote-unquote scholars have for centuries tried to make sense of it all. For the purposes of today's segment, we'll stick with the hierarchy created by Maimonides in the 12th century.
I thought you were going to say my mom.
She probably made one.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'd love to get a hold of that. Maimonides made a hierarchy of heavenly beings in the 12th century, and according to him, there were 4 main divisions of heavenly beings with many subdivisions. They were in order of greatest to weakest: the Ophanim, Seraphim, Malach, and Cherubim. So in this scale, Malach, or the messenger angels we are most familiar with, only outrank the Cherubim.
How do you spell Malach?
Oh, in the Hebrew, it is MAL''AKH.
Okay. So quite different than Moloch, the god.
Right. It's a whole different. Yeah. It's not. I don't think they're etymologically related at all.
Good to know.
Yeah. So, by the way, for context, the model designed by Dionysius in the 5th century had the cherubim near the top of the hierarchy, second only to seraphim. So it's all just a fucking mess.
Yeah,
Right.
he was an asshole.
Plus, everybody's just making it up anyway.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
you put them where you want them.
Exactly.
I like those chubby little winged bastards, so I'm going to put them at really close to the top.
Well, now you probably ought to forget about those little cute nude baby angels we commonly refer to as cherubs.
What?
That is an interpolation that worked its way into many centuries later by Christian writers and artists, probably based on Cupid, actually.
Yeah.
Well, they say a fat baby's a healthy baby.
Who says that?
What's a fat Moloch like?
They do.
Who's they?
Don't worry about it.
Okay. You just
Get out of my business.
Oh, so the cherubim of the Bible are animal-human hybrids.
What?
And they're the first angels mentioned in the Bible when they are tasked with protecting the entrance to the Garden of Eden after the fall of Adam. However, they are not described in detail until the book of Ezekiel, the book where all the magic happens, that Uncle Mark slogged through back in episode 85. So,
Yeah, I didn't listen to that, so you're going to have to remind me.
I didn't either.
I know. I don't think anybody has. Listeners, if you haven't listened to it, go back and don't. Ezekiel 1, 5-14 says the following. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man, okay? And everyone had 4 faces, and everyone had 4 wings. Oh, it doesn't sound
That's
like
not
a man
like a
to
man.
me. Yeah. And their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot. Again, not terribly humanoid. And they sparkled like the color of burnished brass.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, that's nice. And they had the hands of a man under their wings of their 4 sides, and they had their faces and their wings. I know it just sounds like redundant. And their wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went, and they went everyone straight forward. So basically this thing just kind of went forward and backward, side to side without turning.
Yeah.
It sounds like a really bad remote control car that you got at the discount toy store.
Well, also, it is a complete fail to describe anything. Like,
Exactly.
can you imagine if that was like a cop taking a crime, a crime scene report? It's like, dude, no. Wait, what? Start over. This doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well,
Okay, officer, it looked just like a man, except
exactly.
everything.
And the sole of his feet were like calves, but his feet were long and straight.
Well, and it goes on. As for the likeness of their faces, they had the face of a man and the face of a lion on the right side, and they had the face of an ox on the left side, and also the face of an eagle, presumably sticking out the back.
Not a man, any part of that. Except the first part. Everything else is not a man.
Exactly. Thus were their faces, and their wings were stretched upward. 2 wings of every one were joined to one another, and they covered their bodies. So 2 wings flapping, 2 wings wrapped around them like a dress. As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, and like the appearance of lamps. It went up and down among the living creatures, and the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning, and the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning.
I think I have a theory as to why I've never heard this before. Because literally everything you've just said, you can't picture anything.
Okay.
There's
Right.
literally nothing to picture there. It is just word salad. So everybody just ignores it. 'Cause,
I agree. I think that most believing religious people just breeze over this because, like, what the fuck? However, people have tried to depict this. If you Google search cherubim, you'll see what people have come up. And it's
There's
not...
some really interesting takes on it.
Yeah,
Like,
it's pretty horrifying.
and they're all nightmarish.
Nightmarish. Whatever the fuck this thing is, it is not a fat baby. Yeah, I mean, it's got these, other heads sticking out the side and back of its head. It's wrapped in its own wings, and it's flapping with these 2 hooves sticking down. It's a bit weird,
Yeah.
but it's clearly related to the Babylonian Iyamasu or the Hittite griffin or the Egyptian sphinx, which all kind of served similar purposes of guardians in those cultures.
Kind of chimeric beings where you take the 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 strong attributes of many strong animals and just kind of pack them together, and
Exactly.
then you say there.
But if you
I
take
feel
that,
like it's you take a bunch of drugs and then you just keep talking and someone else writes it all down.
Well,
Exactly.
I would say too, as a migraineur, that is the actual name of those of us who suffer migraines. Like when I get visual migraines, they're kind of a nightmare and kind of a giant pain in the ass. But you see all kinds of crazy geometric shapes and lights moving, and it's very possible in a time before people knew what the fuck that was. That that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you absolutely. In this time and place, you didn't know why you had dreams. You certainly
Right.
didn't know why you had nightmares. So, and if you ate the wrong thing, ate the wrong mushroom, you certainly didn't know why what was happening to you was happening to you.
Right.
right.
So, moving up my Maimonides' scale, we've already talked about the Moloch. So let's move on to the Seraphim. These creatures are described in the book of Isaiah as follows, and it's a little shorter, mercifully. Above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, and with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. And he cried unto another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. That's it. That's all we get of the seraphim. So there's not much to go on here. And if you look this up on Google too, it's pretty. They're actually quite beautiful. Because it's kind of covering its head with 2 wings and the rest of its body with 2 wings, and then it's flapping. So it's kind of this ephemeral.
There's nothing
ball,
to see. It's just you just see a bunch of wings.
a bunch of wings.
Too many wings. Yeah, I think it's too many wings.
And it's the way they're covering themselves with wings is very much like Lieutenant Uhura in her famous feather dance in Star Trek V. If any of you have not seen that, make sure to not.
Is that
called
Star
the-
Trek V, the Undiscovered Country?
No, that's oh fuck.
Stumped you, motherfucker.
No, it's coming to the Undiscovered Country 6. 5 is the Final Frontier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And probably the worst one of all. Anyway, these angels are
We're going to get emails now. That's going to happen.
We're going to get buried.
stand by that one. Okay, the seraphim are kind of the choir that accompanies God, and they sing that holy, holy, holy song all the time.
It's a great song.
yeah.
It's really, really catchy.
You might remember them making an appearance all the way at the end of the Bible in the book of Revelation, which we covered back in episodes 58 and 60. Even then, they were constantly singing that song. So these angels...
It's kind of the wet-ass pussy of its time, really.
It probably was.
Oh, God. Okay, so everything we've talked about so far, well, nothing like what we commonly think of as angels, at least have attributes of humans and animals that, although alarming, are at least familiar. Well, strap the fuck in for the last and most powerful angels on the list, the Ophanim. I don't know if it's Ophanim or Ophanim, but I'm going with Ophanim.
So is that an Irish name?
No, that's out of the book. That's out of the Bible.
No? Okay.
Ophanim.
I'm Patty O'Fanner.
Patty Ophanim.
I agree to disagree.
Sorry, everybody in Ireland.
Wild-ass Irish angels.
These angels are only referred to once in the same fever dream chapter of Ezekiel that described the cherubim. This gets weird, starting in verse 15. Now as I beheld the living creatures, and he's talking about the seraphim right now, or the cherubim, pardon me. Behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with his 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl. And they had 4 and they 4 had one likeness, and the appearance of their work was like a wheel. When they went upon 4 sides, and they turned not when they went. As for the 4 rings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them 4. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Whithersoever the Spirit was go, they went. Thither and their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over and against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. Almost done. When those went, these went, and when those stood, these stood. And when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them, and the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. So
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I know.
Yeah.
It's fucked up.
That
you
is
just
not
say
how you
anything?
describe a thing.
I know. But if you can, if you read it 10 times, and you'll finally kind of come to what he's describing is a creature shaped like a gyroscope made of crystal covered with eyes. that floats up in the sky and dashes to and fro with the cherubim.
This is Ezekiel's wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to do a Google search for Ophanim, do that. Just don't do it right before you go to bed. It is super fucking weird.
Right.
And, you know, if you take the Bible literally, then you've got to try and literally square that circle. So, you know, you believe that there is some heavenly creature that basically is two interlocking or, you know, gyroscoping wheels covered in eyes, and that it is the most powerful being in heaven aside from God. Wow. So there's that. The description is so strange, even for the Bible, that some people believe Ezekiel was describing a UFO, or more likely was in the throes of a significant psychedelic drug trip.
Yeah.
Now, these aren't the only strange creatures in the Bible. There was, of course, the Leviathan and the Behemoth, as well as the many strange and bizarre beasts in the book of Revelation. But these are the heavenly ones.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the Old Testament and throughout the entirety of the New Testament, as long as you leave out the book of Revelation, which I recommend you do, we only ever encounter the humanoid Moloch. So, you know, the Seraphim and the Ophanim are kind of relegated to the ancient religion, you know, the ancient part of the religion. And just for some contrast, I mentioned this earlier, the angel Moroni and the other various angels that visited Joseph Smith during the Restoration were all humanoid. In fact, just complete straight-up people. And part of what made being Mormon such a drag is the doctrine of eternal progression from the book of Abraham that we made fun of back in episode 155. I'm sure Joseph thought he was hitting pay dirt here, but because the doctrine basically states that God was once human, just like us. He has progressed to his current station. Angels are therefore simply former humans in their own stages of progress. There's no mystery. There's no strangeness to God and his angels. They're just dudes. How much would I have preferred to look at artist depictions of the cherubim or the Ophanim rather than listen to General Conference? Or listen to Trent Reznor's version of the Song of the Seraphim rather than listen to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir? God, being a Mormon sucks. So parents out there listening, don't fall into the trap of buying the same costumes that everyone else is getting this year. Instead of dressing your kids up as a sexy Fauci or a coronavirus, why not spook the fuck out of your friends on Instagram by dressing little Timmy as an angry Ophanim or a particularly shouty Seraphim? So
I just figured out the Ophanim, by the way. I just figured it out.
What?
You guys remember Superman 2, right?
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
It's Zod's prison. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, was it Zod's prison, or wasn't it where they kept that crystal that Zod stole?
No. Zod and originally, in the beginning of the film, Zod and the two other prisoners are stuck in the spinning.
Right. You're right.
Crystal
wheels.
thingamajig.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's where they're standing trial. They're in those two hoops that are going whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, whoa. That's right.
That's that's as good a representation of an Ophanim as I've seen.
Just put some eyes on it and you got it.
So there you go.
Happy Ophanim Halloween, I guess.
Yeah. So there's that. Yeah. The Bible continues to make a ton of sense and be very relevant to our daily lives.
Yeah,
yes,
that all
indeed.
happened. All right, let's move on.
Uncle Doug,
Hello.
an event has just occurred that happens twice yearly.
A seismic.
A seismic world-changing event.
It changes my world every time it happens because traffic downtown in Salt Lake City becomes annoying just for a couple days.
Except not this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, not this time. That's true. That's
Nobody was
true.
there.
But Uncle Mark, you wanted to talk a little bit about this.
Well, as far as events that change the world go, yeah, for sure. I'd like to discuss that. And just a week ago, as of this recording, was of course LDS General Conference here in Salt Lake City. Mm-hmm. And if you're confused by what I just said, that is spelled CONTFRNSE. And it is the semi-annual barn burner of excitement, doctrine, slightly confused old men, long, very silent pauses, and a backdrop that non-Mormons always mistake for a funeral. So I think it was like the 219th or 190th or something. Who gives a shit? Doesn't matter.
Who gives a shit?
And speaking of non-Mormons, more than a few listeners have asked me, what in the hell is the deal with how the old men in question speak, particularly at conference? Now, as Mormons, we're incredibly used to that, right? We've kind of just taken it for granted that is what holiness sounds like.
That's what good oration sounds like, yeah.
Exactly. So I think I want to try to help our listeners understand this a little bit. And there's kind of two conversations to have here about conference. One is style and one is substance. And as I've said, more than a few Never Mormon listeners have asked what the fuck is up with the somnambulist intonations of conference talks after they've seen clips on YouTube. So let's start with the style conversation, if there is such a thing.
Right.
There is actually an extremely common hypnosis technique called either the voice roll or simply the hypnotic voice. And it's really pretty simple. You just slow your speech way down, become very monotone, and avoid complicated subjects that require intense concentration on the part of the listener. And then their breathing patterns unconsciously start to mimic that of the speaker. And then, if you can...
Why aren't we using this for our patron section?
I think we are.
Pressing 0. Now, if you can proceed or underscore all of that calming talk with even more calming, monotonous music, that gets the whole room into the same slow, relaxed breathing pattern. Their heads are like little plastic sacrament cups you can just go ahead and fill up with anything you like. That's my theorem anyway, but I watched a bunch of YouTube videos from hypnotists, and the way they describe, working with their patients and the hypnotic voice is exactly what
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Well,
Yeah.
here's a question. Do you think, and maybe you're going to get to this, but do you think that this is...
conscious?
Yeah, I mean...
I don't know.
I think to get to that level of the Mormon Church, you have to perfect that voice. But I wonder if somebody somewhere is like, here's what we're going to do. But, I don't know. I don't know either.
No, I don't know if it's just a culture that has developed. Mormonism has all these strange little kind of cultural idiosyncrasies that are all its own.
Right.
And I don't know if this is just what, again, like we were saying earlier, if what you think holiness sounds like when you're enculturated in the Mormon Church, or if at some point, because I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of an evolution here in how the conference talks worked, or if at some point, they said, oh, it's more effective if we kind of slow it down a little bit and have help people relax into it. So
maybe there was a kind of natural selection that happened here.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about literally the most boring group of humans on the earth.
Oh my God, yes.
I think it's totally believable that they just came to this quite naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so too. I don't think Mormonism has a lot of sinister kind of elements to it, but I don't think they're sinister in that way.
I don't think they're that. I agree. I don't think they're that purposefully sinister.
Yeah, because what they're saying in conference is public. It's not like they're using a hypnotic technique to plant an idea, right?
Yeah.
To plant such a subversive idea that they would hide it from the cameras.
But I will say this: it is boring enough that I'm pretty sure my heart has stopped entirely while I've been watching it at various moments.
Yeah, as we'll discuss and as we'll listen to some of these guys say, it is, listeners listen. They will think in this segment that the podcast has stopped.
Yeah.
And it hasn't. So you just got to bear with some of these clips I'm going to play because there are some long pauses.
Let's get to it. I'm
to
excited.
I think for Mormon listeners that cadence that we're about to experience is so ubiquitous in Mormon hierarchy that it's triggering.
Yeah,
but for
that's true. This is a trigger warning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to listen to, actually. I find it it correlates to a lot of trauma in my life. So you're welcome, dear listeners. We'll suffer through this together.
Let me make one connection before you dive in, just because I think it adds some color, which is ironic because it's coming from Mike Pence. There
is a color there. It's just white.
I found his performance at the debate the other day to be very, very reminiscent of the, and it's because they come from similar backgrounds, right? Like, he is a hyper-religious guy, but I found the way he would talk in that unctuous, slow, monotone way very, very much like what we're about to experience now.
Yeah, it's true.
Plus, he had the good element of obvious anti-woman sort of nonsense. So, like patriarchal patronizingness. Is that a word? I made that up.
Style and substance were very similar to what Mormon Conference talks are. So
right.
So here is a former prophet named George Albert Smith. I think he was the last prophet to have a beard, you guys.
What?
He had kind of a Van Dyke. He was kind of a
that's
smart Van Dyke with glasses. Yeah,
He looks very much like Lennon.
He does look a lot like Lennon. So here he is in 1941. This was the earliest recorded conference I can find, and I think you'll find this interesting. Here he's talking about how a Catholic man wrote to him to have the Tabernacle Choir sing a particular song when he was going to have his leg amputated. Oh. So, yeah, this is a very strange story.
That man in his room was absorbing something, that the result of which was that the next morning, when the doctor came to take him into the operating room and examined him, he said, "Why, there's no necessity to take you into the operating room. Man, your leg's getting along all right. We'll not take it off." And this good Catholic wrote to me, and he says, "I wonder if other people would think what I think. I wonder if they'd believe that I was healed by hearing the songs that the Lord loves to hear, songs of praise." And so I want to say to this Tabernacle Choir, that's only one of the many blessings that you could trace if we only had time to trace them.
So the reason I played that is because it is not what conference talks sound like now.
No, it was lively and engaging. A complete bullshit story, but
still plenty of long pauses. And I think, one of my new theories about this about this phenomenon is that it's just because these guys aren't born they're not natural speakers. They got to this position not because of their, great charisma. The charismatic leader is long dead. They got here because, whatever internal politics happened, and that doesn't necessarily set you up to be a great public speaker. So
no,
the other
except
side of that,
by the time you're prophet, you've done a ton of public speaking.
Yeah,
you may not be great, but you've done a lot,
right? And it's all been firesides and church speeches. So you've polished this, cadence,
this patois,
to a point where not only you're good at that specific thing, but it's also just incredibly and obviously insincere.
Right.
Yeah. But I listened to that clip, Mark, and it sounds like old timey radio Bible hour.
See, I think that is a very classic American kind of preacher. Not like a Pentecostal fire and brimstone, but say like a kind of mainline Baptist church from the same time. And he did have that very interesting flourish that in his voice that sounded more like Burl Ives to me than anything else. And but what I find interesting is that he comes out of a much earlier Mormon culture. I wonder if that was kind of what it's used to sound like.
Sure.
Right, closer to its founding is more very much an American, mainline Protestant kind of sound to it. But let us move on. So just a few years later, less than a decade, 20 years later, things began to take a major turn toward the vanilla, guys. And here's one of our favorites, a young Thomas S. Monson, way before he was prophet, speaking in General Conference.
It's so hard to believe that there was ever a young Thomas Monson.
It's impossible that he was ever young. So this is 1963.
I feel to thank my Heavenly Father for His many blessings to me. I'm grateful to have been born of goodly parents, whose parents were gathered out of the lands of Sweden and Scotland and England by humble missionaries, who through the bearing of their testimonies touched the spirits of these wonderful people. I'm so grateful for my teachers and my leaders in my boyhood and young manhood in a humble pioneer ward and a pioneer stake.
So you can see it's begun to evolve.
Yeah,
right?
that sounds much more like what I'm used to.
Yeah.
Literally just trying to drag you. It feels like, you got your foot caught in the stirrup and now your horse is just walking slowly away.
Just sauntering.
That's what I listen to that. It makes me feel like when you're at a red light and it turns green and the car in front of you doesn't go yet.
Yeah.
Just fucking go. Well, it's going to get worse, Doug. You're now going to be stuck behind a senior citizen in Florida at the green light, right? So I'm jumping ahead. There were plenty of examples from the 70s and 80s that were also good, but I thought it would be illustrative to jump ahead in this same man's life, and here he is as prophet, Thomas S. Monson, 44 years later in 2014. See if you can detect a change. Here we go.
Arthur Gordon wrote in a national magazine, and I quote, "When I was around 13 and my brother 10, Father had promised to take us to the circus.
Oh.
But at lunchtime, there was a phone call. Some urgent business required his attention downtown. We braced ourselves for disappointment. Then we heard him say into the phone, 'No, I won't be down. It will have to wait.' When he came back to the table, Mother smiled. 'The circus keeps coming back, she said. 'I know,' said the father, 'but childhood doesn't.'" Close quote.
Sorry, I had to get the close quote in there. So,
Close quote.
Close quote, as though he had written this down contemporaneously.
close quote. So you could hear, it's like take him from 1963 and play him at half speed.
Yeah.
Right.
And
It's kind of what's happening.
Like that pause when he said it required his attention.
Yeah.
Downtown.
Downtown.
Just say downtown. It required his attention downtown. Why is there a fucking pause there? You're killing me.
Yeah, there's not even a comma in that moment. Just fucking roll on, baby.
Yeah.
And also, there's just this, I don't know if this is just a Utah culture thing or if it's very specific to Mormons of this age, but he never says his mother, their mother, my mother.
Right.
It's always mother.
Right. Yeah,
And
that's another
father.
Mike Pence thing.
And remember, this is a guy who is talking to other adults.
Yeah.
Like, that's the voice you affect when you're talking to a child who's slowly falling asleep.
Exactly.
Right.
As you're waiting for the Benadryl to kick in so you can go have a drink.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's have one final one. This is one of the great offenders, as far as I'm concerned, of this particular speech pattern. The incredibly insincere Jeffrey R. Holland from 2016, speaking in conference voice in all its glorious flower.
Oh, boy.
Brothers and sisters, do you have any idea? Do you have any notion or inkling whatsoever of how much we love you? For 10 hours, you watch, fixed on one face at this pulpit sequentially. But for those same 10 hours, those of us seated behind this pulpit are fixed on you. You thrill us to the center of our soul. Whether that's the 21,000 here in the conference center or multitudes in meeting houses and chapels, or finally millions around the globe in homes in some distant location, maybe huddled around a family computer screen. There you are. Here you are. Hour after hour. In your Sunday best. Being your best.
Uncle Mark, you didn't have to play the whole 10 hours.
Mormonism, above all else, is a test of endurance.
Oh, my God. And when he says 10 hours, you guys, there's 10 hours of that shit.
Yeah. There's 10 hours of that shit, and then a lot of people have, like, meetings to talk about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Like family meetings and community meetings. So.
And it speaks to the style, whatever you want to call it, that when he was at the beginning, when he was like, "Do you have any idea?" I'm like, that was kind of menacing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure where he's going with this, but he's like cracking peanuts while his thugs stand behind him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's again, it's literally very difficult for me to listen to that because of that bizarre intonality and the extremely insincere delivery. And this particular guy, Jeffrey Holland, is famous for cracking, or just about crying at just the right moment.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You could hear it in that clip you played.
Yeah.
It's very clear that on the teleprompter it says, "Pause to cry."
Yeah,
I'm
it's so
very
performative
emotional right now.
Yeah, it's so performative, and and so self-evidently insincere and rehearsed.
Yeah,
that it's.
I don't know why you guys keep saying it's insincere. He said he loves me.
That he's been staring back at you in your Sunday best.
I know. Again, like
being your best.
My eyes have been fixed upon you for a long time.
It's very spooky.
It is. That's why I'm saying mine is like just a perfect match for your guys' segments. So
yeah.
So that's kind of stylistically how Mormonism has somehow arrived at this. But I think then there's also the substance issue of what conference is, and Mormon leaders use the semi-annual conference to make tiny tweaks at best to the massive machinery of Mormon doctrine and practice. Usually their talks consist of doubling or tripling down on already problematic or odious policies that they've had in place for decades, things that generally are extremely brutalizing or cruel to women in the church, to non-white people, to the LGBT community in the church,
right.
and outside of it. So, this is kind of just stylistically alone, it's pretty nauseating in my opinion. But if you listen to, if you can wade through the incredible boredom, there are sometimes these moments of there's very occasionally news made, right?
Right.
They very occasionally tweak something. Like this is how slowly Mormonism, the ship of Mormonism, can be turned. When they went to 2-hour church, that was insane.
It was a seismic event.
Yeah, that's true.
Seismic
I
event.
do have to say, Uncle Mark, that while you kind of glossed over the fact that yes, a lot of their stuff, sure, it's anti-LGBTQ, it's horribly racist or whatever. At least they, as you've heard in some of these clips, at least they have really interesting, totally made up stories to illustrate their points.
Yeah, we just talked about that recently, didn't we? What were we talking about? Oh, I think it was in the Go Ask Alice segment.
Yeah,
we were talking about how Mormon leadership they'll just have the most perfectly crafted anecdote for the moment, without anybody's names, without any specifics,
right?
No attribution. They would fail a freshman writing class because they had no bibliography, right?
Exactly.
Well, and because it's so clearly fake, it's not even thinly veiled as true. They just claim it's true. But there was one just this year, just this last conference last week, where a woman. This was in the women's meeting. They don't allow the women to talk.
That's right. That's right, everybody. The ladies get their own meeting for men to talk to them.
Right. And then they also have to sit through all the other bullshit. But this was in the women's meeting, and a woman told a story weepingly about a woman that she says, quote, "I'll call her Mary."
To protect her, the identity of the innocent.
Right, yeah, exactly. No, obviously you made her up, and you're telling a story about how coffee ruined her life. What the fuck is the matter with you?
Not only did coffee ruin her life, it ruined generations.
Yeah.
Right, because great-grandma or whoever, Mary, had a coffee pot on the stove. She was like a farm woman, right?
Yeah.
And she had a coffee pot on the stove, and she just occasionally enjoyed a cup of coffee. Well, that has separated generations of her family from eternal glory.
It's the stupidest thing.
And she cried. And she
did.
cried.
Which they all do. That's another big Mormon thing.
Yeah.
Men in wards, and just in a regular sort of parish church sized congregation, men who have never cried, who have never shown a single emotion other than anger to their own children, will openly weep in front of a group of their fellow church members.
Yeah, and their children, to whom they have been generally angry or indifferent at best,
Right.
have to sit there in the pews among their friends and gape in horror at seeing their father cry.
Yeah.
And I think it's good. I cry all the time. Men should cry.
Yes.
They should just do it more often than in front of everybody in the neighborhood twice a year.
Right. And because they quote unquote felt the spirit when they were at the camping trip that they took their family on or whatever. It's always so made up and so put on. And
Yeah. And it's almost a right, like you can't advance it's almost a sign of power.
Yeah.
That how easily you will cry as you tell the story you've practiced 50 fucking times.
It's how spiritual you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
You know what's weird to me, though, guys, is that that's all true, but with how little the church actually changes policies, why do they do this twice a year?
well, I think that's exactly. I was just thinking about that. I agree they shouldn't, because they don't make changes to anything significant except when they make huge fucking PR mistakes.
Right.
But
which is pretty frequent, which is
mostly
more than twice a year.
Yeah, exactly. But you remember when they moved church to 2 hours, or they got rid of the term Maya maids. Like Mormons are expecting to find out we're being called to Kirtland, Ohio, or something like that. Like this is it. The second coming's coming, and every year they're disappointed. So mostly the speeches are about nothing.
Yeah.
I honestly think that you hit the nail on the head at the beginning, Mark. They're just renewing the hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's like the conference is like a communist newspaper. It's you
Yeah.
know, it may be 20 pages long, but there's no fucking news in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Nothing changes, but they just have to go through these motions and kind of keep the machine moving, because if they say we're going to conference once a year, well, it means they were wrong to have done it twice a year. Right? So they can just never do that. So that's kind of conference, guys.
Yeah.
It's
torture.
Torturous. It's so insanely boring.
Yeah, I've told the story before on I think this show, where when I was sitting in for you, Dan, on Thank God I'm Atheist a couple years ago or whatever, Frank wanted to do a conference wrap up, and so I went to YouTube and I'm like, oh fuck, okay, I can do this, and put on vomit-proof clothes and sat on the floor and I watched 3 fucking hours of conference before I realized it was the wrong year. I have never been more angry in my life. So I had to start over. So anyway, it's just excruciating. If I advise against ever participating in it beyond this segment of our show.
It's a good reason to not be a Mormon, you guys.
One of many. So
One of many.
In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Oh, gentlemen,
Whoa.
look, we do a show. Here's how the order of operations goes. We create content, and then it is consumed then in the through the series of tubes that is the internet, and people seem to sometimes enjoy it. And what's great about that is that those who enjoy it and who can afford to, sometimes, when they're the best type of people,
Send us a kilo of cocaine.
that was only the one time, and actually I measured it out. It was a little less than a kilo, so they owe us.
Here's
Well,
the thing about
it was a
sending
great night anyway.
Yeah. Here's the thing about sending cocaine. You have to keep sending cocaine.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just do it the once.
Yeah, that doesn't have an off switch.
So anyway, other people choose to give us some of their hard-earned cash, and for that we are very grateful, and we owe some thanks.
Yes.
So thank you so much to David, to Sam, and Michael, and to Kat with 2 T's.
Yay.
Y'all are this week's best folks. Other people can do us a solid by peppering our sky with stars.
Yeah, you can do that. You can go to Stitcher. You could go to the iTunes. Anywhere that you can give us 5, give us a high five. That's all it is.
You're listening to us on an app of some sort. Surely they have a way of giving us 5 stars. Nothing less. More if you can. And
do it while you listen to the show. Star us while we amuse you.
Yeah, it's so easy.
What's the harm?
5 or die, and we sure do appreciate you. Let's move along.
Uncle Mark.
What? Honestly, what the fuck? What do you want?
Well, longtime listeners to this show might know that this is a bit of the technical term is a shit show.
You mean our show in general?
Yes,
Yeah.
our show in general.
Yeah.
It's a bit seat of the pantsy,
Yeah, it can be. There's a lot of pants seating.
but somehow the magic still happens.
Oh, it's magical, guys.
That's called Cody.
And given the myriad of subjects out there in the world, it was inevitable that 2 of us might accidentally cover some ground at the same time on the
What
same
we in
show.
the business call hip-hop gridlock. Yes.
Listen, guys. Look, it's October, okay? And so for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, that means that the vibrant, verdant days of summer are giving way to the death and decay of autumn. Warmth and life now bow their heads to the deceptively sweet scent and deceitful bright colors of nature's final jolt into rot and decay. So, it is no wonder then that both Doug and I have decided that this is the time of year when we celebrate the spooky and the scary. Ooh. When we look into the darkness of the void and hope not to be too terrified by what looks back.
I'm suddenly realizing my segment is exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's do it.
So look, our real lives, as Doug mentioned, are kind of terrifying right now. We don't need ghouls and goblins to scare us when we have an actual global pandemic and an election approaching that, should it go the wrong way, could threaten not only the safety and security of millions of Americans of color, the entire LGBTQ community, the immigrant community, and possibly even straight cis white folks who would deign to defend those people. But also, it threatens to disrupt international security, leaving the whole world in danger with a oh my God. I can't even say the word. Megalomaniacal. That's as close as I'm going to get.
I'm going to be your assistant here. Oh God.
No, you can't do it.
Megalomaniacal.
Thank
welcome.
you. I'll just say a narcissist's finger on the button of the world's largest nuclear arsenal. So really, everybody, you 100% have to vote for Biden. There's no fucking around now. There's nothing more important than getting Trump out of office.
No more writing in Jill Stein.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. All of your objections are valid, but you still have to vote for Biden.
These guys talk me out of Kanye, so come on, guys. You can do this too.
That's right. Anyway, with all that actual scary stuff out there spooking the shit out of us, I thought I'd lighten the mood with some of the scariest stories of the Bible. So, everybody put on a cozy sweater, get a campfire going, not you, California, and let's continue our fall spooktacular. So, now some of these you may have heard before, perhaps on this very show, or maybe even this very episode. We might need to coordinate better in the future. But don't shout out what happens, because the rest of the kids may not have heard it, okay? And remember, all of this is directly from God's holy book, so it's all 100% absolutely and unequivocally true.
Because it says so.
Right. Exactly. So, let's start with some real quick, sort of general spookiness. And I'll start us in Acts chapter 12, where there's a fun little tidbit. Herod, the Roman king of Judea and general all-around sort of bad guy, had been pretty mean to the disciples of Jesus, killing some, imprisoning others. All of that's pretty impressive considering our best scholarship indicates that Herod died in the year 4 BCE. Anyway, apparently Herod was one hell of a good public speaker. One day, he got up in front of his subjects to give an oration. It was good. Everybody flipped out. But it didn't turn out great for Herod, and we know that because God sent one of Doug's scary angels. Quote, "And the people were shouting, 'The voice of a God and not a man!' Immediately, an angel of the Lord struck him down because he did not give God the glory, and he was eaten by worms and breathed his last."
Yeah.
Boom. Worms, instant worms.
Yeah.
I think that's and
a
then the Bible
crappy
just
way to
literally
go.
moves on. This is especially funny because apparently the way Herod actually died was much worse than this. According to Josephus, he came down with a disease so painful that he once attempted suicide to free himself from its clutches. They called it Herod's evil. I'll take angel death and instant worms over that any day. Next, let's talk about King Belshazzar in the book of Daniel. This is a fun bit of spookiness that I talked about in episode 99. Belshazzar's dad, King Nebuchadnezzar, had sacked Jerusalem and taken all their good stuff.
And their unblemished boys, which is just never addressed. 1,000 unblemished boys. Okay.
Well, who wouldn't take them?
Yeah.
You sack a place, you take their unblemished boys.
Yeah, you leave the blemished ones, you take the good ones. That's
Yeah,
what you do.
exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, then he snuffed it, and old Belsh took over. One day, just to be super duper extra disrespectful to the Jews, he decided to eat off the gold and silver plates and cups that his dad had stolen from the Jewish temple, which was a big no-no. Everyone at the party was having a good time. Quote, "They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone," which is just a weird thing to do, but they did it anyway.
Yeah, all the
the
materials.
This sounds like just a normal night at the White House.
Yeah, exactly. The Bible continues, "Immediately the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace opposite the lampstand." I'm not sure why we had to know that part, but it's good
Wait,
to know.
where did it happen?
It's world building. Opposite the lampstand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. I just
Yeah.
had to get that in my head. Go ahead.
I love the
good,
idea
good.
that this book was so specific. Like it was being written to a guy who knew the layout. By the lampstand. You know the wall.
Okay, it's sort of across from where the phone used to be, but not where it is now. That's in the other room now.
Is it by the foyer? No, across from the lampstand. It's very important we put it in the Bible.
Right. So, yes, a disembodied hand comes and writes some stuff. The king's color changed, and his thoughts alarmed him. His limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. So, yeah, that's some knee-knocking spookiness there.
That's some Scooby-Doo right there.
Yeah, exactly. I don't believe that has ever happened to any real human, but it's good Bible stuff, so we're going to leave it in. It turns out that what the hand wrote was actually literally just gibberish, not real words in any language.
Really?
So
Wasn't it mene? I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, exactly. But nobody could figure out what it meant, so when they fetched Daniel to interpret, he kind of had carte blanche to just, say anything that he wanted to. So nice work if you can get it.
I think the voice said, "I think you should move the lamp."
Right, exactly. This lampstand is bad feng shui.
Yeah, mene tekel ufarasin. So there you
Which
go.
is roughly translates to Mecca Lecca Hi Mecca Heini Ho. Let's get some scary monsters into the mix. The Bible's got lots and lots of those. Yes, there are unicorns, but they're not scary. So let's start with dragons.
Yes.
The King James Version uses the word dragon 21 times. One of those is the giant red dragon from Revelation. That beast, you'll recall from Doug's trip through that hell in episode 58, has 7 heads and 10 horns. I guess the horns aren't evenly distributed among the heads. But one beast that isn't called a dragon, but sure sounds like one, is Leviathan, which Uncle Doug you referred to earlier. In Job 41, God is busy bragging about all the amazing beasts he has created that nobody has ever seen, but he assures us they're very real. He had just barely told us about Behemoth, who, when you read the description, seems like a particularly ferocious hippopotamus. But then there's Leviathan. Quote, I will not fail to speak of Leviathan's limbs, its strength and its graceful form. Who can strip off its outer coat? Who can penetrate its double coat of armor? Who dares open the doors of its mouth, ringed about with fearsome teeth? Its back has rows of shields, tightly sealed together. Each is so close to the next that no air can pass between. They are joined fast to one another, and they cling together and cannot be parted. Its snorting throws out flashes of light. Its eyes are like the rays of the dawn. Flames stream from its mouth. Sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke pours from its nostrils, and as from a boiling pot over burning reeds. Its breath sets coals ablaze, and flames dart from its mouth. Strength resides in its neck. Dismay goes before it. It goes on and on and on.
I would prefer if you read that in the voice of Tim the Enchanter.
Right, yes.
Describing the bunny outside
great
the castle.
pointed teeth! Its neck is great strong!
I'm glad it has a strong... Isn't it a whale? Isn't Leviathan a whale?
No,
I
it's
don't
some
know.
kinda-
You tell
it's some
me.
kind
I
of
just
plated
described
dragon.
it.
Yeah.
It's got scales on its back. It's got pointy teeth.
I'll give the lunatic who wrote this some credit. It is a better description than anything in Doug's segment, right?
100%.
I can kind of see an animal here.
Right, yeah, exactly. I was sort of picturing the things that fly around in the first Avengers movie at the end there.
Yeah, it's like a...
Yeah,
is
totally.
Is it a rhinoceros? I don't know. What the fuck?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Anyway, it's a one hell of a whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I literally only read like half of what was of what was in the description. Then there's the random death and destruction wreaked upon the people of the earth by the scariest monster in the whole Bible, God himself.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm thinking of the time. I am thinking of the time when he decided that the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah weren't hospitable enough, so he killed everybody in them except for one family. And then when one of them turned to look at all her friends and everything she had ever known being destroyed, he turned her to salt.
Yeah.
Or the time when God killed the firstborn son of every Egyptian household, as Doug referred to, just to make a point. This was after, of course, turning all the water into blood and killing all the livestock and destroying all the crops and so many other plagues.
Yeah.
Or the time when he just killed everybody on the planet except for one conspicuous boatload. But there are the lesser-known God slaughters also, like the one in 2 Kings chapter 19. King Hezekiah was under attack by the Assyrians, of whom there were a lot. The Assyrian bad guys were so confident that they sent their meanest commander to go to Hezekiah's troops and hit them with a particularly hurtful taunting. And I'm not kidding you, this happened. He was, and I assure you this is true, very, very rude. This apparently...
The manners of the Assyrians are just
right?
terrible. Yeah.
Right? This apparently demoralized everybody, troops and king alike. So they went to the prophet Isaiah to see what he could do about it. When Isaiah prayed, and the Lord said, "You're right, they're icky." And that's when Uncle Doug's angel stepped in and, quote, "put to death 185,000 in the Assyrian camp." And quote, and I'll continue the quote. When the people got up the next morning, there were there were all the dead bodies. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, broke camp and withdrew. He returned to Nineveh and stayed there. Boom! That's how you win a war.
Well,
and that's how the Jews won all their wars from then on out.
Right.
Just kidding. God's not that reliable.
I'll tell you, though, for the 185,000 soldiers dying overnight might be the single biggest
Casualty
casualty count in history.
Yeah.
And it speaks to how fucking terrible this book is, that I didn't even know about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And also, yeah, like I point out, why didn't God do that for his people all of the times?
Yeah.
That's just
Exactly.
if that's on the table as one of the possible like war things that God can do, do that.
Kind of the classic absentee father, right?
Right.
You don't see him for 3 years, and then he buys you a fucking pony. It's
Right. He shows up, gives you a car, and then leaves again.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the Bible is reading like season 8 of Game of Thrones right now.
Yeah. If it's possible, it's even more badly written.
I was
so there you
looking
go.
for comparisons to like the number of Americans dying now from coronavirus daily to other things, and I may be wrong, but I seem to recall this that in World War II, our average burn rate for American soldiers in the war was like 265 a day in World War II.
Wow.
Yeah, okay.
And with multiple theaters, with bombs and machine guns and all that kind of shit. And nope, 185 guys, boom, one night.
One night.
185,000, yeah.
It's the most efficient way to war that we have.
Truly. Bet it is.
Finally, I want to talk zombies. I will start with the story that Uncle Mark first told us all the way back in episode 86. This is from the very alarming book of Ezekiel, which Doug touched on as well, which is the writing of an obvious crazy person.
Yeah.
And this is chock full of death and destruction, but really comes to a head in chapter 37, which is where we find the Valley of the Dry Bones.
Yes.
The Lord had spirited crazy Zeke into a valley positively littered with human skeletons. God asks Zeke a trick question, can these bones live? And Ezekiel was smart and gave the following answer, oh, Lord God, you know. Which I think that's
so big.
I like that. That's a clever way to answer when God tries to trap you out. Just be like, you know. So then God tells him to prophesy over these bones and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord God to these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter you, and you shall live. So Ezekiel does just that, and, quote, as I prophesied, there was a sound, and behold, a rattling, and these bones came together, bone to its bone. And I looked, and beheld, there were sinews on them, and flesh had come upon them, and skin had covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, prophesy to the breath, prophesy, son of man, and say to the breath, thus says the Lord, come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe on these slain that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood on their feet, an exceedingly great army. Now, it all turned out to be a stupid dream sequence, but that's pretty creepy anyway, n'est-ce pas?
Yeah, well, I wonder if the guy who wrote Ezekiel saw the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, because that was really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounded more to me like the basement in Westworld.
Jesus.
All of the things. You know, nothing new under the sun, fellas. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Then there was this crazy zombie moment from Zechariah 14. Now, Zechariah is prophesying about what the Lord's going to do in the final days, which I guess is coming any moment now. Anyway, apparently a bunch of countries are going to wage war against Jerusalem. I'm not sure I'm sure back then that seemed, like a thing back in those Bible times. But, whole countries against one city doesn't seem right. Yeah. But whatever. Anyway, Jerusalem is going to win. And then, quote, this is the plague with which the Lord will strike all the nations that fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they are still standing on their feet. Their eyes will rot out in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. Yeah. On that day, the people will be stricken by the Lord with a great panic. They will seize each other by the hand and attack one another. A similar plague will strike the horses and mules and camels and donkeys and all the animals in those camps. So, White Walkers, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like zombies to me.
Also, why can't you just say all the animals? Why do you have to list like 3 and
All
then
the
go
animals,
and
you
all
know.
the others?
And the ossifrages and the weasels.
And the orangutans.
And the fruit bats.
There's a quick zombie in 2 Kings chapter 13. Elisha the prophet has just died and been buried. And then, quote, "Now the Moab raiders used to enter the country every spring. Once, while some Israelites were burying a man, suddenly they saw a band of raiders, so they threw the man's body into Elisha's tomb. When the body touched Elisha's bones, the man came to life and stood on his feet." Yeah. So, a little quick zombie action for you right there.
Yeah.
But of
Instant
course,
zombie.
the main zombie story in the Bible comes to us in the New Testament. No, I don't mean Jesus. I mean, yes, he came back from the dead, but he wasn't really that spooky.
You mean Lazarus?
He was a nice zombie. Lazarus also just, definitely a zombie, but not the one I'm referring to. So I want a good zombie story. It needs to be sort of a freak thing, a surprise. So let's go to the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 27. Poor Jesus is on the cross, suffering, calling out to God, "Why have you forsaken me?" It's all very dramatic. Then, with a final scream, Jesus dies. And that's when the shit really hits the fan. The curtain above the temple tears from top to bottom, which, I don't know. Maybe it was an expensive curtain. It doesn't sound very scary.
Is it the one by the lampstand?
It's next. It's across from the lampstand.
It's across. Okay, that curtain. Sorry.
Right.
I don't mean to get so specific.
No. Not
It's
the
right
good one.
It's
Not
right at the edge of the
This one's
foyer.
the blue and red with the pattern on it.
It's by the tabernacle, you guys. It's right there.
Right. But we are building tension here, so let me continue. Because then the earth shakes. Rocks split. Suddenly, tombs open up. Well, that's new. I'll quote from the Bible, "Many bodies of the saints who had died were raised. And coming out of their tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many."
Yeah.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
I love how that's in the story of the crucifixion. It's in Matthew. It's like one of the stories that Christians know as well as any other, right?
Right.
They're super familiar with it, and everybody just glosses over.
Yeah.
That a bunch of zombies just kind of hung out for a little bit. They
Showed up at the pub.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
"Hi, honey. I'm just back to make sure you didn't remarry." "Okay, bye."
Don't do it.
Did I miss the crucifixion? Oh, shit. Yeah.
And that's it. That's the scary stories from the Bible. I did the Witch of Endor just a few months ago, so I skipped her. But just a few, just a smattering.
God. It's just a sampler. It's hardly all of them. So
yes, exactly. We'll
So-
come back and do some more next year.
There is non-Utahns probably some know that there's a town in Utah called Moab, named after the biblical Moab, and if you ever come to Utah, you're probably coming to go through Moab to get to Arches or Canyonlands National Park. It's very pretty. But what's the mascot for the high school down there? If it's not the Raiders, they really miss. How cool would that be?
A great point.
Well, you know where the Moabites come from in the Old Testament. They are the seed, the fruit of the union of Lot's daughters and Lot.
Ooh, yeah.
So from such humble beginnings,
From such,
to Tomb Raiders and the high school mascot in Moab. I think we've tied it all up with a bow, fellas.
I couldn't think of the word incestuous. That's what I was looking for. From incestuous beginnings comes the
There you go.
Moabites.
Like so many other wonderful things. Well, thanks, Dan. There's plenty to be scared of anyway.
It's a
Yes,
spooky book.
indeed.
It's a spooky book. Enjoy.
Let's move on.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's unintentionally themed show.
Hey, if you've got something spooky to tell us about, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you are a Mormon General Authority, please do not leave us a voicemail at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986, because it's only a 10-minute load. I'm also on Twitter at HowToHeretic.
And many thanks to our awesome patrons.
And thanks to Cody Layton for editing the show.
And thanks to all of you, friends, for tuning in.
Bye, friends.